Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. My name is Alden Kroll, and I'm a designer here at Valve.
My name is Augusta Butlin. I'm business development here at Valve. Alden and I both work on Steam.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and thank you for the questions that you submitted ahead of time. We got a lot of great questions from you, and over the course of this session, we will try to get to all of them and hopefully answer them satisfactorily for you. We find with this kind of event that it's usually pretty useful to back up a little bit and introduce and reiterate what Steam is and how Steam works, and talk a little bit about what we think is important in terms of running a platform and thinking about both customers and developers in the process of doing so. We put a lot of work into building both long-term relationships with players and also long-term relationships with developers. So we think of building Steam as a platform where players want to come and buy and play games. And so we spend a lot of time and energy building features and services that make it really fun for players to play and own games on Steam. And evidence of that is shipping devices like the Steam Deck that make it so that your game can just be played in more places by the customers that are excited to play your game. At the same time, we work on providing a platform that can help developers reach customers and run your business. So all the services and features that go along with that. And we're always making improvements to tools and rolling out new services that help you as a game developer stay in touch with your customers, run your business, understand how your game is doing, the tools to discount your game, reprice your game, all of the things that you need to run your business day to day as far as selling your game and reaching customers. And so in order to serve both developers and customers, we've built Steam into a platform that can help really surface the right games to the right customers. And we look at what games people are playing and use that as a way to decide what other games to be showing them, and also giving customers a great degree of personalization and customization options as they're exploring around, especially the Steam store. And so for you as a game developer, that means that we don't run a platform where you need a secret handshake to find success. Instead, it's really about making and showing off your game under its best light and using Steam simply to connect with the customers that are interested in your kind of game. So the tags that you apply to your game help Steam understand what kind of game you're making. We'll go into more details on things like that as we answer some of your questions. And we think of Steam as a global platform. We have customers all over the world that speak many, many different languages. And it's really useful for you as a game developer to also think of your audience as a global audience that speaks different languages, has different tastes, play different kinds of games, live in different time zones. And so you should take all of that into consideration as you're planning for release and leading up towards release, and the content and the languages that you support in your game. And it just means that your customers can come from anywhere around the world. And they might be really different kinds of people than you're used to communicating with, and that's great. A big part of how Steam achieves this by surfacing the right games to the right players is the personalized front page of Steam. And that really means that my front page looks really different from Augusta's front page because we play different kinds of games and we have different friends and we follow different curators, we follow different developers. My friends make different reviews. If we lived in different countries, there might be some different regionalization options, or that like we might see different top sellers lists because we're in different countries. So there's a bunch of personalization that goes on there that helps Steam connect your game with the customers that are going to be the most interested in it, regardless of where they live. From here, I think we're going to jump into your questions. And I think the first question that Gus is going to dive into is, what is the most common mistakes Steam developers make when submitting games to the platform? Gus?
Yeah, so we looked at this question. We went, I wonder if this has to do more with like the review process or generally preparing your game for release or talking to customers. So we're kind of going to answer it on multi-fronts here. There is a brief review process when you do onboard onto Steam and want to submit a game to be sold and distributed on the platform before you can post your coming soon page for your game, and a secondary one once you have your build ready to be reviewed. This allows our review team to make sure that you dotted all of your I's and crossed all of your T's. Make sure that you didn't forget to include any redistributables or your executable, or if you say that you have cloud saves or achievements in your description, are they actually in the game? Do they work? So it's a very light and straightforward process, but the things that we look for there are making sure the game's build matches the features indicated on the page. Make sure if you have things like controller support, did you indicate the level of controller support that you have? Is the user able to go from purchase to play just with a controller? Do they need a keyboard and mouse? We have a mature content survey to make sure that you're accurately describing very specific types of content that might be in your game. Is your library art legible? Did you remember to put your logo on there, or is it just your characters? Can you read the small cap? And then is there a sufficient amount of description in your about the game section? If you're participating in early access or your answer is really vague, we want your game to be set up for success so that, when users go and look at your store page, they go, oh, okay, I understand what I'm getting into and I'm really excited about it, as opposed to I'm confused by this. And so that's kind of part of like the store page review process. But that might not be the type of question that was being asked here of common mistakes. So we have some more generalized, things to think about that you might not necessarily be thinking about when you're preparing to release your game on Steam or just in general. So some pitfalls might be, advertise your game and not your concept art or that cool cinematic thing or your logo. Make sure that you are making your game shine. Your trailer should be quickly into gameplay so that users can get a sense of what your game's like, what's cool about it, what will they be doing. Making sure that your art, your logo, everything's legible. If you're going to include, graphics interspersed with your about the game description, making sure you don't bake text into those because those can't be localized, just a bunch of things of reaching customers in ways that they expect to understand and learn about your game. Localize. You might not be able to fully localize your game into all of the languages that Steam supports. That's a large undertaking, but you might be able to localize more about your game description because that's shorter to do than lots of lines of text or voice acting. And it just helps you reach a larger audience. So thinking about where your game is being advertised and reaching out to those sorts of users in the ways that is meaningful to them. They get to see your game play and can understand more about your game. There are some best practices to think about before launch, at launch, and throughout the lifetime of your game. And we have some tools and documentation on the Steamworks site under marketing tools. So I would encourage folks to check that out. Off-Steam communication. Steam does a whole bunch of work of connecting your game with users we believe are going to be interested in it. But you've got fans everywhere. They're on Twitter, they're on Reddit, they're in your Discord, they're on WeChat, all of these different places. So making sure that you're talking early and often, getting your game out there as much as you can to build an audience, have relevant things to say to them over time as you march your way towards launch. We have tools to do this as well. We have our events and announcement system, which allows you to build really beautiful blog posts that will show up on your store page, in your community, in the library of Steam itself too. And that gives you a communication path to take all of the hard work that you do about, inside your game or, in preparation for your game's launch, and give you a very customized and interactive way to share that communication with users. And they can follow your game or you as a developer and learn more about it. Tags. Tags is one of the best practices prior to launch as well. We have something called the Tag Wizard, which will help you accurately describe cool characteristics about your game that help make the connections between similar games, genres, features on Steam. So there's tons of strategy games, but maybe you want to get a little bit more granular with it. Is your game a real-time medieval 8-bit strategy game? Like there's a bunch of different descriptors and tags that can help make these connections, and not only have Steam surface your game to users with like interests, but also gives users a way to actively search through Steam as well. So they can go to different tag hubs and discover your game there. And it really helps set your game up for success right off the bat. And once your game launches too, the community will find, really cool things about it too, and apply their own thoughts about how your game should be tagged. Steam supports broadcasting and live streams right on the store page or any events page that you put up as well. So think about not only, on your, way towards launch, but on your launch day, or perhaps you did a major update after your game's been out. If you aren't going to, stream yourself, perhaps there's someone in the studio or an influencer or streamer that, you're working with. We use Restream, and it's very easy to take content that's been streamed elsewhere and have it be broadcast specifically on Steam. And again, that's just a really cool way to, for users to see what your games actually like to play, to hear commentary while someone's playing it. You could use it for other fun things too, like dev AMAs or interviews and those sorts of things too. And then post-launch, there's, tons of opportunities to update your game. You're going to have bugs. You're going to want to, add that feature that didn't make it in at the last minute, or, respond to, your community of what they'd like to see next for your game. So lots of updating. Participating in sales and promotions. Like we have been running a bunch of seasonal sales on Steam, as we always do, our summer, winter, autumn, and Lunar New Year sale, along with thematic sales. Like we have an upcoming racing sale. We just ran, which one did we just run on? The Going Rogue sale. We've done city builders and tabletop fest and all different sorts of stuff. So there's tons of opportunities to get your game in front of users over the course of its lifetime as well. Let's see here. A couple other things that we think it's good to point out that will help you set yourself up for success is, learning about the audience of your game. What kind of game are you making? What are similar games out there in the market? How are they priced? What features do those games have? What localization do they have for the game? Read through their user reviews, go into those forums, see what users are commenting on, and figure out what your MVP candidate for your game is, and start getting in front of players. We have tools like demos on Steam, which you can participate in Steam Next Fest, which is a showcase of a bunch of upcoming titles that are getting ready to launch. We have the ability for you to run a play test where you can invite users to, fill up your server and test out your maps, turn it on and off, and get a coming soon page up as early as you can. So this is where you are going to be gathering users to advertise what's cool about your game. They can wish list it. When your game is released, we'll let them know. And there's just a bunch of things that you can do. So giving yourself more time to try out your communication. What do users resonate with? I think that would be our biggest advice. Give yourself more time so that you are able to figure out how you should talk to customers, how you should, talk about your game, what things do they resonate with. So don't put your game up for 2 weeks and coming soon and, expect in those 2 weeks to be able to do all of those sorts of things. I talked for a bit, so, and I'm hoping that answered the pitfalls question in a very holistic way. Alden, I'll let you do the next question. And it is, what are some important metrics that developers must pay attention to in the long term? And are there any misconceptions or outdated ways of thinking about those?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And probably we could turn into a whole talk in and of itself. There is no shortage of data available on Steam about your game, depending on how you want to look at it. And the metrics that you're going to want to pay attention to are going to depend a lot on your goals and also the kind of game that you're making. So for example, a premium game is going to have different metrics that are important to them than a free-to-play game or live service game. And so it's really important to think carefully about what your goals are and what are the important things for you to be tracking and measuring that you can actually use to make decisions based on. So if you're building a multi-game studio, some things that might be more important to you are things like how many people are following your developer page on Steam and whether you're building long-term relationships with customers. And that might be different than somebody that is just a hobbyist or just getting started in the industry and just wants a bunch of people to try out their art that they're making. So I'll walk through a few concrete examples of things that Steam provides. Steam has a lot of pretty near real-time reporting of metrics, so there's a lot to dig into here. I'm going to start by kind of looking at this through a regional lens, because I think one of the most actionable bits of data that you can take away from Steam data is stuff that might help you decide which languages to translate your game into. So earlier on, Gus talked about translating your store page. And one of the actionable things that you can do with that is, for relatively low cost, you can translate the text of your store page. And then you can use that so that your store page is more accessible to more players in different countries that speak different languages. And so if you're thinking about this well ahead of the release of your game, that just means that more people can understand what your game is about and what it's like. And then Steam reports regional wish listing. So you can go in and you can look at, what countries are people wish listing your game from? And you can use that then as a metric to kind of judge, oh, well, it turns out there's a lot of people in Japan that are really excited about my game. I should probably translate the game into Japanese so that those customers can understand the game. So there's really good regional wish listing data that you can get to within the sales and reporting dashboard. If you go into regions and then look through there and expand each different region, you can see the wish listing for your game under that. So that's one way. Another thing, obviously, if you're selling a game, premium game, you're going to want to look at sales of your game after release. How is that doing? How is that running over the long run? Combining that kind of just keeping an eye on your sales curve and thinking about that also along with when was the last time you put a discount on your game? What kind of upcoming sales opportunities are there? And that gives you a way to reach different customers at different price points and really, also help amplify updates that you might have that are coming out about your game. So you can keep an eye on your sales and just kind of see how people react to different discount percentages that you run, whether you combine a discount with a big update. So really just kind of keeping an eye on how people respond to those different combinations of things that you're running on your game. And then you can use that to make future decisions about how deep you're going to discount, or whether you're going to combine it with an update or some other kind of interesting news or announcement. If you're making a free-to-play game or a live service game, you might care a lot more about player retention. So Steam has a number of player-based stat reporting that you might find really useful. So things like concurrent players, which you can download a CSV that will be able to map that out if you want to import that into some other tool that you're using to analyze data. Of course, this is also all presented on our stats, our sales and reporting portal, so you can see that graphed out over time as well. That we also have a section that shows off daily active users, and so you can get a sense of where you're trending, what kind of updates, what kind of player response you see to each update that you're shipping, or new seasons of content you're putting out, or things like that. If you're running a live service game, you're probably continuing to run in-game events that you would hopefully re-engage your audience or keep them coming back. So you can use a lot of these concurrent player, daily active users, median playtime in your game, these kind of reporting to see if players are responding to your updates and your events in the way that you would expect them to and that you would like them to. And so you can kind of use that to gauge, we ran this kind of event and not very many people engaged. Let's try this different kind of event. And that time we got a lot more people coming in. Let's do some more of that. So those are good things to keep track of and pay attention to. Another concrete, actionable set of data that you can get from Steam is controller stats. So you can see not only what controllers people are playing your game with, but you can also see what kind of controllers people that have your game also have. So they may have controllers and maybe they're not playing your game with them. Maybe that's because your game doesn't support those controllers very well and you haven't thought about that. That might be really useful data to help you decide that it's worth putting in controller support into your game. If you're getting a few requests from players about that, and you also see that a lot of your customers have different kinds of controllers, then that might be really helpful in helping you decide, what to prioritize adding that controller support. And of course, Steam has a great input API that you can integrate with that makes it fairly simple to support a whole lot of different controllers with just one integration. Another not really metric, but I think a thing that is really useful for part of your development feedback loop is looking at user reviews. So not so much about how many you're getting, but using them as a form of feedback. We find it most useful to hear what customers are talking about when they think that we're not listening. And so when they're talking to each other and they're writing reviews to each other and they're writing comments and things like that to each other, what are they saying about your game? That could be a great way to learn, do they think it's too expensive? Do they think they're getting a different experience than what they thought based on the store page or the screenshots? Those can all be things that you can take away and decide, okay, I need to recapture my screenshots because people think this is a different game than it actually is, or I need to recut my trailer so that I can get to gameplay faster, or maybe people think that it's too expensive for the amount of game that I'm getting, or it's too cheap for the amount of game that I'm getting, et cetera. So that can be a really great way just to learn what customers are thinking about your game and talking about your game, and use that as feedback. Try not to obsess over them, but just use it as a way to collect feedback and understand what customers are concerned about and talking about. And then the last point I'm going to touch on is if you're doing any kind of external, like if you're pointing any kind of links towards your Steam store page externally, whether you're buying ads or whether you're just running a link on your own web page, or you're posting something on Reddit, or talking within some kind of community of players, you can use UTM tracking. So there's a special code then that you can include as part of your link, and you can use that to track how effective those activities are at converting ultimately to wish lists or purchases on Steam. So we have a whole documentation that goes into talking about how to make use of that, and that's something that you can just enable and start using right away. So I hope this was useful. There's a lot more depth and detail that we could go into on any of those topics. We definitely have a lot of documentation available on Steamworks, so I encourage you to check that out if you're curious about more or any of those particular kind of metrics. And now we'll move on to the next question. And I'll set this up for Gus. She's going to answer the next one. We had a couple of questions from developers about what kind of content they can ship on Steam. Gus, do you want to just talk generally about that?
Sure. So there's tons of different content, and because Steam is a global platform, there are a bunch of different countries or regions that have specific rules around what type of content can ship. Obviously, we can't offer legal advice, but we do encourage you to do your research. If you believe that your content might be controversial to a particular region, hire a lawyer that is knowledgeable in video game content and in certain regions. Do your research to see other types of similar content that is shipping and where. And there's lots of software applications available across the internet, and not all of them are a good fit for Steam. So we have a set of rules and guidelines of what can and can't be distributed on Steam. And those are available when you go to sign up, and also in our documentation around onboarding. There was a specific question around NFTs, and Steam won't distribute applications that are built on blockchain technology that issue or allow for exchange of cryptocurrencies or NFTs. So they are a hot topic at this point presently, but that's our current stance around them. The next question is kind of a combination of questions, and so I'll pose this to you, Alden. We often hear from developers that are curious about the number of games that ship on Steam and how we think about that. So, Alden, how do we think about that?
Yeah, as Steam has grown in size of audience and the number of games available, we've put a lot of effort into organizing the platform around getting the right games in front of the interested customers and players. So over time, we've seen that this has helped more and more games connect and really resonate with their customer groups. And that means that more and more kinds of games have been able to find success on Steam. You go back 10 years ago and there's whole subgenres of games that couldn't have an audience on Steam and didn't have an audience on Steam because we simply didn't have those games available on Steam. And now today they're multi-million-dollar subgenres and categories of games, and many games making a living shipping those kinds of games on Steam. And that's great. And we think that's really healthy, both from a development standpoint, and it helps customers get excited and find new kinds of games that they may not have even known that they wanted to play. Not every game is going to sell a huge number of copies, but then not every game put on Steam was ever necessarily intended to sell a lot of games. Many games are put up by hobbyists or people that are just getting into the industry, and they're just trying to learn from the process of shipping something on Steam. It's useful to remember that your game isn't competing against all of those other games and every single other game on Steam. Your game is going to be connected with players that play the kinds of games that you play, and you're making a certain kind of game. And the best thing that you can do is identify what are the strengths of that kind of game that you're making and your particular game. What are the unique hooks, and how do you make sure that you can communicate that effectively to customers so they understand what's different about your game, what's unique about your game, and also what is similar about your game to others that they might enjoy. So really thinking about who your audience is and how to communicate and connect with them, and really what is different and unique that you're bringing to that genre or that theme or that kind of game that is going to make people interested and aware of your game. And definitely, there's lots of games that ship on Steam and they're not getting in the way of your success. We see every year more and more games reaching all levels of success on Steam. And then we think that there's still lots and lots of room for growth in both the breadth of content and any given kind of game on Steam as well. We'll move on to the next question, which was, how do you think Steam's future looks in regards to services like Game Pass and other subscriptions? So Gus, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Steam supports. I'm tripping over my own words here. Steam already supports subscriptions services. We have EA Play on Steam. And we're open to subscription plans from other partners as well. It's a lot to consider. What's the offer to customers? How is the content available in a bunch of different places, and how are they expected to think about them? So it needs to be able to make sense to the developers, the publishers, the users, obviously, and Steam as well. So we're certainly open to those conversations and have tech to support it. So we'll kind of see where the future takes us there. Alden, we have a question around Steam Deck, and this one is: do you think Steam Deck might impact the way that developers optimize and design their games in the long run?
I hope so, because I hope that Steam Deck goes on to continue being very successful. We already find it a resounding success, and as you may know if you've tried to purchase a Steam Deck, that there is still quite a backlog of more people wanting a Steam Deck than we were able to manufacture. So we are working on that and trying to meet that demand. But really, we think probably optimization, as specified in the question, probably isn't the biggest concern. Steam Deck is quite powerful and can do a lot, and we can do a lot with the OS to optimize common things that benefit a lot of games all at once. And so if you've been keeping an eye on updates that we've been shipping for Steam Deck, you've probably seen a lot of things coming out pretty quickly that optimize both individual games, but also large groups of games. And we can do that because we have control over the root OS as well. And we can do a lot of great optimization between the graphics cards and everything to really benefit everybody's games on the device. We think it's just great for players to have more choice about where and how to play their games. So I think in the long run, we'll probably see more developers put more thought into controller support in their game and making sure that that is a really positive experience. We already see a lot of games implementing great controller support. It's become easier and easier to do. There's great APIs out there that support many different kinds of controllers. We've put our own work into a lot of our own APIs that help controller support. That's probably one of the biggest factors. And it's also, it's worth considering as a game developer and as you're preparing for release, thinking not only about controller support, but also making sure that your font sizes on screens can be legible. We have a whole great guide in the Steamworks documentation about preparing your game for Steam Deck. It's really not that complicated. There's only a few little key pieces of advice along those lines that I just mentioned. But I encourage you to check that out as you're thinking about preparing your game for release and even after release, if you want to go back and optimize it for that kind of experience as well. Moving on to the next question. This one will be for you, Gus. How should developers think about third-party DRM for their games?
Sure. So in general, we haven't seen really restrictive DRM be a great customer experience trade-off. And we have seen that if you instead focus, your effort into making the version of your game that you're selling be the most valuable thing, that's really key into providing a good experience for users and them wanting to support you directly. Make it easy for players to buy and play the game that they want. So we talked a bunch about this in some of the previous questions, but thinking about pricing appropriately for each country and for the game that you're creating, translating your game into languages that that reach a broad audience, focusing on making your fans super happy. So that could be, thinking about what updates could be free, which ones should you package into DLC, what features are they asking for, and just continuing to pour effort into the version of your game. So that's, I mean, a little bit more philosophical how we think about DRM. The last thing that we wanted to cover, well, I guess not the last thing, but one of the last things we wanted to cover was, just talk generally about some new features and updates that the Steam team have been working on here. Alden, do you want to take a couple? I'll take a couple.
Sure. Yeah. So obviously, we're really excited about Steam Deck. That has been a big source of a lot of our time and energy has been going into the lead up and launch of Steam Deck, and we continue to update almost, I think, every day. I see new updates go out from our team for Steam Deck. So that's on the software side, but also on the hardware side, manufacturing. Just we're trying to catch up to the amount of demand that there is for it, and it's great to see how excited customers are to get their hands on these, and game developers too. We know a lot of you have put in requests for developer kits too, and we're still trying to catch up with that as well. We have limited quantities of that, but we are working our way down through that list of requests. So hang in there, and hopefully we can eventually get to your request as well. Also recently announced in terms of being able to play games in more places on more devices is now Steam is coming to Chrome OS. So there's a set of Chromebooks that run Steam. And there's, I guess it's an alpha form of testing that's available for that. So you can kind of see where that's headed, that more games, again, can be played on more different kinds of devices. And especially as maybe customers are moving away from traditional Windows laptops to different kinds of devices, it's just more places that people can play the games that you ship on Steam. We've also recently put a lot of work into revamping our tools for managing discounting and kind of the rules behind that make that more consistent and easier to understand. And then also the tools that just make it way easier to manage your discounts, especially if you have more than a single game on Steam. Lets you see all of them in one glance, lets you see what kind of upcoming discount opportunities exist and how to sign up for those or participate in those. So we've been putting a lot of work into that, and we're kind of working our way through a number of related tools, so you can keep an eye out for some related updates along those lines as well.
I guess I'll hop in and talk about a couple of features that I briefly talked about earlier. One of them being Steam Next Fest. And this is a festival for upcoming games, not yet released games on Steam, where if you have a playable demo, you're welcome to participate and show off your upcoming game. It's very well received by both developers and players and press. We get very good coverage on titles that are coming up, and do a bunch of work to help make those connections. So it's something that if it can be built into your roadmap and you have a really good vertical slice or a level that shows off your game really well, you should consider that close to your launch. It's a nice kind of ramp up right into launch. We see a bunch of users download demos, watch streams that are going on there, and add games to their wish list to be notified, when they release. Another one of the recently released features that was directly in response to you, the developer, how you're building and your game and testing it prior to release, making sure you're as bug free and ready to go as possible, is a Steam playtest. And we created this to give you a lot of control and options for letting testers into your game on your own time, and having the ability to have it be related to, but also separate from your main game. This gives you a bunch of tools like being able to turn the build on and off. So perhaps you want people to all join your server over the course of a weekend. You can make an announcement that's specific to the playtest app ID, and you can let users into it, and you can also revoke access without having us be a bottleneck for you. So you can develop on your own timeline, on your own terms. The other thing that's really nice about it is that the playtest lives right on the base game's app store page. So while users are there, joining your playtest, they also, are right next to the wish list button or the follow button. And if they're having a really good time, it's a great way to make the connection between your beta and your main game. Something that we've integrated right into your build process is patch notes. So oftentimes users will see, hey, Steam's updating one of my games. I wonder what's going on. Well, now you can let them know very easily. So you push your new build live on your default branch. We will give you a very easy way to just put in your bug list fix that you just released. Not every update is going to have a beautiful blog post about the 3 bugs that you fixed. So we've got a very nice, easy way to get patch notes out to your users, and they can, they dig through those and are always interested to see what you're changing. Yeah, and I mentioned this earlier too, but we have tons of events and sales, some hosted by us, others organized by you guys, by studios and developers and groups around themes. So things like Ludonaricon, which just ran, our tabletop festival that we do almost every year now, the racing theme sale that's coming up. There's a bunch of different ways to get involved with sales, with streams, with updates. So yeah, if there's something that you think is super interesting that you're doing or that your community is doing, and you'd like to let us know, we have a path for that too. I think that kind of wraps it up. If there, I said you should let us know. Okay, how do you let us know? Contact us. Okay, so we have in the Steamworks site, we have a support link at the top of the page, which will create a ticket. I answer those tickets. Alden answers those tickets. It's a great way for our whole team to be able to hop in and help people. We get to them much more quickly than we do email. We have a Steamworks Twitter handle at Steamworks, which we will post downtime, blog posts, news for things that you should be aware of. So please give us a follow there if you'd like to keep up to date on what we're working on. There's the Steamworks blog. You can go ahead and give that a follow. It also will show up on your Steamworks dashboard on the homepage as well. And we have a YouTube channel with tons of video resources, quick tips, tutorials, interviews with other developers that have used features and how they think about them. Super helpful stuff. So yeah, guess that is it. Thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for your great questions. And thanks, Gus, for chatting with me and everybody here today.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
All right. Take care.